The first sign something was wrong was the silence. When my father died, the world did not stop for grief. It kept moving, loud and careless, like nothing sacred had been taken. People brought food. People sent messages. People said the same lines that sounded rehearsed. But inside me, everything became quiet. My father, Robert Hale, was gone. And I was not even there when it happened. I was 3 states away on a work contract, the kind that pays well but steals your life, piece by piece. I had promised Dad I would come home next week. He had told me not to rush. He sounded normal on the phone, maybe tired, maybe older than he wanted to admit, but normal. Then I got the call. Not from a hospital, not from a doctor, from my uncle. "Ethan," Uncle Mark said, voice low, "your dad is gone." Gone. He said it like Dad was misplaced property. I drove through the night, hands gripping the wheel until my wrists ached. When I reached the funeral home, my family stood in a neat row like they were waiting for a photograph. My Aunt Linda cried loudly. My cousin acted like he was holding her up, and Uncle Mark, the man who called me, stood like a pillar, calm, steady, almost proud. He hugged me, but his hug felt empty. "Your father left a lot of responsibilities," he whispered into my ear. "We will handle it together." Together. That word sounded like a promise. Now I know it was a warning. The funeral passed in a blur of black clothes and handshakes. I stood beside the casket, staring at the polished wood, trying to feel something besides numbness. My father had been strict, but he was honest. He built everything from nothing. He worked until his hands cracked. He raised me after my mother left. The house he lived in was more than a house. It was the proof he existed. It was the only place I ever felt safe. After the burial, Uncle Mark pulled me aside under the cold shade of a tree. "Ethan," he said, "we need to talk about the house." My chest tightened. "What about it?" I asked. Mark glanced around like secrets were floating in the air. "You know your father had debts," he said gently. "The mortgage, taxes." He sighed. "We cannot keep it." I stared at him. "Dad owned that house," I said. "No mortgage." Mark smiled. It looked kind. It was not. "There are always debts," he said, "and your father did not tell you everything." My stomach twisted. "Who says we cannot keep it?" I demanded. "It's my father's house." Mark touched my shoulder like he was comforting a child. "You are grieving," he said softly. "Let the adults handle this. Your aunt and I will manage the estate process." I stepped back. "I am an adult, and I'm his son." Mark nodded slowly. "Of course," he said, "but paperwork is complex. You sign what you must. We protect you from stress." Protect. Another sweet word that hides poison. That night, I went to my father's house alone. The porch light was off. The windows were dark. The yard looked untouched, like the house itself didn't know its owner was dead. I opened the door with my key. It did not work. I frowned, tried again. Nothing. I leaned close and realized something that made my breath stop. The lock was new. My father never changed that lock, not once in 20 years. I stepped back slowly, heart pounding. Then I heard movement inside. A woman's laugh, a man's voice. I walked to the window and looked through the curtain. Strangers. A couple, mid-30s, sipping wine on my father's couch. My father's couch. My blood turned to fire. I banged on the window hard. The man looked up startled. He stood and walked to the door. The new lock clicked. The door opened halfway. The man frowned at me like I was an intruder. "Can I help you?" he asked. I stared at him. "This is my father's house," I said. "My key does not work. Who are you?" The man raised an eyebrow. "We bought this house," he said. "We closed yesterday." My world stopped. Bought? Closed? Yesterday? I felt my throat tighten. "That's impossible," I whispered. "No one can sell it. My father died 2 days ago." The man looked annoyed. "Listen," he said, "I don't know your story, but I have legal documents. The deed is transferred. If you have a problem, call the county office." He tried to close the door. I grabbed it. His face hardened. "Don't touch my property," he snapped. "I'll call the police." Police. I stepped back, shaking, because suddenly my father's home was not my home anymore. It was someone else's, and my family was nowhere to be seen. I turned and stared at the dark yard. Then I looked at the new lock again. They didn't just sell a house. They erased my father while I was burying him. And I knew exactly who did it. Uncle Mark. The man who hugged me like family was the same man who stole my inheritance behind my back. I stood on the porch for a long moment, shaking so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Inside the house, the stranger shut the door and locked it like I was the criminal. I heard the couple talking again, their voices fading into comfort. My father's living room had turned into someone else's celebration. I walked down the steps slowly, my legs heavy like concrete. Then I took out my phone and called Uncle Mark. He answered on the second ring, voice calm and warm. "Ethan," he said, "you okay?" I did not respond to the kindness. "Did you sell my father's house?" I asked. Silence. Just 1 second. But that second was everything. Mark exhaled softly, like I was exhausting him. "Yes," he said, "I handled it." My vision blurred. "You handled it?" I repeated. "Behind my back?" Mark's voice stayed smooth. "Ethan," he said, "do not do this right now. You are emotional. Your father had bills. He owed money to people. I protected you." Protected. That word again. "There are strangers in his house," I said, my voice trembling. "They say they closed yesterday." Mark paused. "Yes," he admitted. "It moved quickly. It had to." I felt rage climb up my throat like fire. "You sold it while I was burying him," I whispered. Mark's voice turned slightly colder. "I did what needed to be done," he said, "and legally, I could." Legally. That word made me dizzy. "How could you legally sell it?" I demanded. "I never signed anything. I am his son." Mark sighed, like he was explaining math to a child. "Your father made me executor," he said. "He trusted me. There were debts. I used my authority." Executor. My stomach twisted. Dad never told me Mark was executor. Dad always said Mark was unreliable, selfish, the type of man who would steal change from a dead man's pocket. So how did Mark become executor? Unless Mark lied. I clenched my fists. "I want the documents," I said. "All of them. Now." Mark's voice became firm. "No," he said. "I will not throw papers at you while you are grieving. Let the process finish. You will get your portion when everything settles." Portion. Like my father's house was a pie being cut. "I am going to the county office," I said. "I am going to check the deed." Mark chuckled softly. "You can," he said, "but you will only embarrass yourself." Then he lowered his voice. "And Ethan?" He paused. "Do not go back to that house again. The new owners will call the police." My chest tightened. He was not worried about my pain. He was worried about control. Mark ended the call. I stared at my phone, shaking. Then I drove straight to the county records office first thing in the morning. The building smelled like old carpet and paperwork. People sat in plastic chairs, waiting for their names to be called like prisoners. When it was my turn, I approached the counter and gave the clerk the address. "I need the property transfer record," I said. The clerk typed quickly, then nodded. "Here it is," she said. "Transferred yesterday." My stomach dropped. "Who signed?" I asked. The clerk looked at the form.
Robert Hale, and executor Mark Hale. My mouth went dry. My father did not sign yesterday, I whispered. He was dead. The clerk frowned. I only provide records, she said. If you dispute it, you need legal action. I swallowed hard. Can I see the signatures? I asked. She printed a copy and slid it to me. I stared at my father's signature. It looked like his signature, but something felt wrong. The curve of the R, the pressure on the final line. My father's signature was bold, strong. This one looked tired, forced. I looked at the date stamp, signed the morning of his death. My blood turned ice. It was either forged or my father signed under pressure. I drove to my father's bank next. I asked for account statements. The manager looked nervous when she saw my father's name. "Mr. Hale," she said carefully, "your uncle already requested information." Of course he did. I pushed for limited details, enough to confirm my fear. 2 days before Dad died, there was a withdrawal, large, then another, then a transfer, to a private account, under Mark's name. My hands shook as I held the printout. Mark did not sell the house to pay debts. Mark created the debts. He stole from Dad before Dad died. Then he sold the house to erase the trail. That night, I met with Victor Cruz, a criminal property attorney recommended by Claire Morgan. Victor listened quietly, then said words that made my blood go cold. "This sale can be reversed," he said, "but we have to act fast." I leaned forward. "How?" I asked. Victor tapped the paper. "Fraud," he said, "forgery, and illegal executor abuse. If Mark forged your father's signature or forced him to sign, that's criminal. We can file an emergency injunction." My breath shook. "And the new owners?" I asked. Victor's eyes narrowed. "They may be innocent buyers, or they may be part of the scheme. Either way, the transfer can be frozen." Frozen. I felt something sharp rise up inside me. Not grief, not rage. Purpose. Victor looked at me. "If we do this," he warned, "your family becomes your enemy. They will fight. They will threaten. They will lie." I stared at the stolen deed. "They already did," I said. Then I stood up. "File it," I told him, because I was done being the grieving son. Now I was the man returning with proof, and if Uncle Mark wanted war, I was ready to bring police with me.
Victor Cruz moved faster than grief ever allowed me to. Within hours, he filed an emergency petition to freeze the property transfer. He also filed a fraud complaint with the county clerk and a criminal report request with the local police department. The process felt unreal. Yesterday, I was burying my father. Today, I was preparing to battle my own blood. Victor called me that night. "We have a hearing tomorrow morning," he said. "Be there. And Ethan, do not contact your uncle again." I wanted to ignore that advice. I wanted to call Mark and scream until my throat broke. But Victor was right. Mark would use my anger. Mark would twist it into instability. Mark would play victim. So I stayed silent. Instead, I prepared. I returned to my father's workshop behind the house, the one place Mark never cared about. Dad used it like a second heart. It smelled like motor oil, sawdust, and old coffee. I walked around touching tools like they were memories. Then I found something. In the bottom drawer of Dad's workbench, under a rolled-up blueprint, there was a small envelope labeled, "Ethan, if something happens, open this." My chest tightened. I opened it with shaking fingers. Inside was a handwritten note from Dad, short and blunt. "Son, Mark has been pressuring me. He wants the house. He wants control. If I die suddenly, do not trust him. The deed is in the safe behind the painting in my bedroom.
and I recorded everything on the old phone. Love, Dad. My body went cold. Dad knew. He knew Mark was circling him like a vulture. I rushed to Dad's bedroom. Behind the painting was a wall safe. The code was the same one Dad used for everything, my birthday. The safe opened. Inside was the original deed, not a copy, the original, and taped to the inside wall was an old phone. Dad's old phone. I turned it on. The battery was low, but alive. I opened the recordings app. Dozens of recordings. The most recent was dated 3 days before Dad died. I pressed play. Dad's voice filled the room. Tired, but clear. "Mark, stop coming here," Dad said. "I am not signing anything." Mark's voice responded, smooth and poisonous. "You are old, Robert. You are confused. Let me help you. Sign and make it easy." Dad's voice turned hard. "I will never sign my house away," he said. Then Mark's voice changed. He stopped pretending to be family. "You will," Mark said coldly, "because if you do not, Ethan loses everything, and you know I can make that happen." My hands shook. Dad breathed heavy. "What did you say?" he whispered. Mark replied, "You heard me. Do not fight me. Sign the papers, or the boy suffers." Dad's voice became furious. "Get out of my house." Mark laughed softly. "You cannot even stand with shaking, and you think you can protect him? You are already dead, brother. You just don't know it yet." The recording ended. I stood there frozen, listening to the silence. It wasn't just a theft. It was a threat. Mark didn't want inheritance. Mark wanted domination. And maybe Dad didn't die naturally. That thought burned in my chest. At the emergency hearing the next morning, Victor presented the original deed and the recording evidence. The judge listened, face darkening. Then the judge issued the order. Property transfer frozen, title temporarily suspended, no eviction enforcement, no further sale action allowed. Victor exhaled. "We stopped them," he whispered. But stopping wasn't enough. I wanted my father's house back, and I wanted Mark exposed. The day I returned to the house, I did not go alone. Victor Cruz met me outside the police station at noon. 2 officers stood beside him, one older with calm eyes, the other younger with a stiff jaw. Victor handed them copies of the injunction order and the property freeze. The older officer looked at me. "You are Ethan Hale?" he asked. "Yes," I answered. He nodded. "Then we do this properly," he said. "No yelling, no violence. You let us speak." I swallowed. "Understood," I said. We drove to my father's house in a small convoy. When we turned onto the street, my chest tightened. A moving truck was parked outside, boxes on the lawn, furniture being carried out. They were stripping my father's home. Victor swore under his breath. "They are trying to move assets before enforcement," he said. The officers stepped out. One of them called out, "Stop moving items, police." The movers froze. The couple, the so-called new owners, came out of the front door looking confused and irritated. The man raised his hands. "What is going on?" he demanded. The older officer approached calmly. "Sir," he said, "there is a legal dispute on this property." He held up papers. "The title has been frozen. No one is allowed to remove items until further notice." The woman blinked. "Frozen?" she repeated. "We bought this house legally." Victor stepped forward. "Your purchase may be under investigation," he said. "If you are innocent buyers, the court will protect you, but this property is now evidence." The man's face turned red. "This is ridiculous," he shouted. "We paid cash." Cash. Victor's eyes sharpened. "How much?" he asked. The man hesitated, then said, 400,000. My stomach dropped. $400,000 cash? No mortgage? No lender? No escrow? It smelled like laundering. Victor turned to the officers. "This is not normal," he said. "These buyers may be connected." The younger officer looked at the couple carefully. "Do you have closing documentation?" he asked. The man nodded stiffly. "It is inside," he said. The officers entered with them. I stepped onto the porch, heart pounding. Then a voice hit my back like ice. Well, look who came back. Uncle Mark. He stood in the driveway in his expensive coat, holding a folder like a weapon. His face wore calm confidence. He looked at the officers and smiled. "Gentlemen," he said smoothly, "this is a family misunderstanding. My nephew is grieving." My chest burned. "You sold my father's house," I said. Mark sighed dramatically. "I saved you," you replied. "You would have drowned in taxes." Victor stepped forward. "Mark Hale," he said, "your authority as executor is under active dispute. A judge has issued an injunction. This property is frozen." Mark's smile twitched. "For now," he said. Then he leaned closer to me. "You should have stayed away," he whispered. The older officer spoke firmly. "Sir," he said to Mark, "step back. Do not interfere." Mark raised his hands like innocence. "I am cooperating," he said. But his eyes were not cooperating. His eyes were calculating. Inside the house, officers examined the deed records, closing documents, signatures. Victor brought out Dad's old phone. The recording. My hand shook as I handed it to the older officer. "My father recorded you," I said. The officer nodded. "We will take that as evidence," he said. Mark's eyes widened slightly for the first time. That fear was delicious. But it was not over. Not even close. Mark tried to act calm, but the moment the officer took the phone, I saw him shift. A man like Mark survives by controlling the room. When he loses control, he becomes dangerous. He looked at me and smiled again. "Ethan," he said softly, "you are making a big mistake. You do not know who you are messing with." I stared back. "I am messing with a thief," I said. Mark chuckled. "A thief," he repeated. "You think I did this for money?" He leaned closer. "I did this because your father was weak." My stomach turned. "You threatened him," I said. Mark's smile disappeared. "Your father threatened me first," he snapped. "He kept me out. He treated me like dirt. Now he is dirt." The older officer stepped between us. "Enough," he warned. Mark lifted his hands. "Fine," he said. "Search all you want. I have nothing to hide." But he did. The officers requested Mark's identification and asked him to wait nearby while they confirmed his executor claim. Mark complied, but his eyes kept shifting toward his car. Victor noticed. He whispered, "Watch him." Minutes later, one officer came out with the closing documents. "The buyer's escrow record is missing," he said, "and the cash payment cannot be verified. This looks like a false transfer." The older officer looked at the couple. "Sir," he said to the man, "you may be a victim here, but you need to come to the station for statements." The woman started crying. "We did not know," she whispered. "We thought it was legal." Then Mark laughed, a short, harsh laugh that revealed his true face. "Victim?" he sneered. "They are not victims. They are idiots who wanted a bargain." Victor turned sharply. "Mark," he warned, "stop talking." Mark shrugged. "I'm done being polite," he said. "This house is mine. It always should have been mine." The older officer's eyes narrowed. "Sir, you are not the owner, and you are now under investigation for fraud and coercion." Mark's nostrils flared. "For coercion?" he snapped. "You cannot prove that." I spoke quietly. "My father recorded you," I said. Mark froze. Then his face twisted into pure rage. "You little rat," he hissed. "You think a recording saves you? You think a judge saves you?" Mark suddenly turned and walked quickly toward his car. The younger officer shouted, "Sir, stop!" Mark did not stop. He opened his car door and reached inside, not for keys, for the folder. Victor's eyes widened. "That's the rest of the paperwork," he whispered. "He's trying to destroy evidence." The officers moved fast. Mark pulled the folder out and started ripping papers, tossing them into the air like confetti. "Stop!" the older officer yelled, grabbing Mark's wrist. Mark fought back. He shoved the officer hard. The officer stumbled. The younger officer grabbed Mark from behind and slammed him against the hood. Mark shouted, "Get off me! This is my family business!" The older officer cuffed him. "You are obstructing justice," he said coldly. Mark tried to smile, but it was weak now, broken. As he was shoved into the police car, Mark leaned his face close to the window and stared at me. "This is not over," he mouthed. But I did not feel fear. I felt relief. Because finally, the world saw him, not as Uncle Mark, as Mark Hale, the man who stole from his brother's corpse. The house was secured. Locks were replaced again, this time legally. Police tape wrapped the door like a warning. That night, I stepped into my father's living room for the first time since the funeral. The couch was still there. The family photos were still on the shelf. Dad's old boots were still by the door. I walked through the room slowly, touching walls like they were memories. Then I entered Dad's bedroom and stood beside the safe. I thought of him sitting in this bed, listening to Mark threaten him, knowing his time might be ending. And I realized something. My father did not die thinking he lost. He died knowing he left me a weapon. Truth.
Mark's arrest did not end the story. It opened it. The next morning, Detective Harris, the older officer, called me. "Ethan," he said, "we need you at the station. Your uncle is talking." Talking meant bargaining. I arrived and was led into a small interview room. Mark sat at the table, cuffs off, but a guard nearby. His face looked different without his confidence. Not weaker, just exposed. Detective Harris sat across from him. "Mark," Harris said, "forgery, fraud, coercion, obstruction. You were facing serious time." Mark leaned back and laughed. "You think I care?" he said. Harris held up the phone recordings transcript. "Your brother cared," he replied, "and he cared enough to record you." Mark's eyes flickered. For 1 second, fear. Then Mark turned his gaze to me and smiled. "You really believe your father was innocent?" he said softly. My chest tightened. "What are you saying?" I asked. Mark leaned forward. "You want truth?" he whispered. "Fine. Your father did not just build that house. He built it on stolen money." My blood froze. Detective Harris frowned. "Explain," he demanded. Mark smiled. "Robert Hale was not some saint," he said. "He took payouts, he made deals, he cheated people, and when I asked for my share, he treated me like trash." I stared, heart pounding. "That is a lie," I said. Mark shrugged. "Then why did he keep cash hidden? Why did he pay people to stay silent? Why did he buy that land for pennies?" My throat went dry. Dad did not talk much about the early days. He always said the past was heavy. Mark continued, voice poisonous. "The reason I sold the house fast," he said, "was because people are coming. People who know what Robert did. People who want repayment. And when they do not get it," he paused, "they take." Detective Harris's face hardened. "Mark," he warned, "this is not a movie. Name names." Mark laughed. "No," he said, "because that is my leverage." Leverage. Mark was still trying to control, but he was not controlling the right man. Detective Harris stood. "Fine," he said. "We'll do it without you." Then Harris turned to me privately outside. "I do not believe him," he said, "but I do believe one thing. Your father may have had enemies, and Mark may have been trying to get ahead of them." My stomach twisted. "Are you saying Dad might have been killed?" I asked. Detective Harris did not answer directly. He said, "We'll look." Later that day, the medical examiner reopened my father's report. Toxicology had not been completed fully due to natural death assumptions. Now it would. While the state moved, I sat alone in Dad's house at night, surrounded by memories that suddenly felt suspicious. Was Dad hiding something? Was Mark telling part truth to protect himself? Then I found another hidden envelope. Behind Dad's dresser, taped underneath. It was labeled, "If Mark tries to blackmail you." I opened it. Inside was Dad's handwriting again, calm, steady. "Ethan, Mark will lie to poison your mind. He will try to paint me dirty so you lose faith. Do not let him. I made mistakes in life, but I never stole. I never hurt innocent people. The only thing I ever stole from Mark was his ability to control me." I left one more recording. Play it if you doubt me. I found the audio file on the old phone. It was dated 1 week before Dad died. I pressed play. Dad's voice filled the room. "Ethan," he said, "if I'm dead and you're hearing this, then Mark has begun his war. Listen carefully. Mark is not just greedy. He's dangerous, and he has friends, men who help him forge, men who help him threaten. If anything happens to me, it's because Mark wanted control." My chest tightened. Dad continued, "I named Mark executor publicly to bait him, so he would reveal himself. I left you the deed and proof, so you could fight, so you could win." My throat burned. Dad did not leave me just a house. He left me a trap. And Mark walked into it.
The toxicology results came back on a Friday. Detective Harris called me early. His voice sounded tight. "Ethan," he said, "we need to meet. Now." I drove to the station with my stomach twisting like a knot. Harris met me in his office and closed the door. He placed a report on the desk. "Your father's death was not natural," he said. My lungs locked. "What?" I whispered. Harris tapped the report. "There was a sedative in his system," he said, "not prescribed. A dose high enough to weaken him." My hands trembled. "So he was drugged," I said. Harris nodded. "Yes," he replied, "and then his heart condition did the rest." My mind flashed to Mark's voice on the recording. "You are already dead, brother." I felt nausea. "He killed him," I whispered. Harris leaned back. "We cannot say homicide yet," he said, "but we can say tampering, and Mark is now connected." Mark was brought in again, this time not as a fraud suspect, as a possible murderer. In interrogation, Mark's arrogance returned at first. Then Harris played the recording. Mark's face changed. He swallowed hard. Harris leaned in. "Mark," he said, "where did the sedative come from?" Mark snapped, "I do not know. You think I poisoned my own brother?" Harris placed pharmacy records on the table. A purchase made the week before Dad died, paid in cash, bought under a false name. But there was camera footage, blurry, yet clear enough. "Mark." Mark stared and started sweating. Then he whispered, "Fine, I gave him something, but I did not kill him." I felt rage flood my body. Mark continued quickly, trying to justify. "He was stubborn," he said. "He would not sign. He would not listen. So I gave him something to calm him, so he would cooperate. He was going to die anyway." I wanted to jump across the table. Harris slammed his hand on the desk. "You drugged him," he said. "You threatened him, and then you stole from him." Mark screamed. "He deserved it. He kept everything. He treated me like nothing." Harris's eyes were ice. "You are done," he said. Mark was formally charged, but the story got darker. The forged notary was arrested too. Under pressure, the notary confessed. Mark did not do it alone. He had help, a small network, a crew that specialized in fraud, selling property fast, disappearing money. The buyers were investigated. They were not innocent. They were part of the laundering pipeline.
My father's house was never meant to be a home for them. It was meant to be a clean exit for stolen cash. Victor Cruz called me with the update. "Ethan," he said, "this is now a criminal enterprise case. You are the heir, but you are also the witness." Witness. That word made me feel exposed, but I did not hide. I returned to the house, replaced every lock, installed cameras, and placed Dad's deed in a secure bank deposit box. I did not trust any wall safe anymore. One evening, I stood in the living room staring at Dad's picture. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I doubted you a second." The house was quiet, but it did not feel empty. It felt protected because Dad's plan worked. Mark wanted control. Instead, Mark gave me justice.
The court hearing to restore full ownership came quickly. The judge reviewed the fraud evidence, the original deed, the criminal charges, and the frozen transfer. There was no argument left. The sale was invalid. The title reverted to my father's estate, and as sole heir, it became mine. When the judge said it aloud, my hands trembled. "This property is returned to Ethan Hale," he ruled. Mark was not there. He was in a holding cell, still arrogant, still furious, still convinced he could talk his way out of anything. But courts do not negotiate with recordings. When I walked out of court, the air outside felt lighter. Not happy, not warm, just lighter. Because for the first time since my father's funeral, something had been returned. Not money, not property, dignity. Victor walked beside me, holding the final paperwork. "This is official now," he said. I nodded, staring at the courthouse steps. "My father would have wanted this," I replied. Victor looked at me. "He planned for it," he said. "He was ready for his own brother." That sentence still hurt. Back at the house, police removed their tape. The doors were mine again. The porch was mine. The yard was mine. The old mailbox with my father's name was mine. I stood at the front door holding a new key in my hand. Then I opened it. The smell hit me first. Dust, old wood, memories. Even after strangers walked through it, the house still felt like my father. Like he was in the walls, watching to see if I would protect what he built. Inside, I walked room to room slowly. The living room looked normal again, but in my mind, I still saw that couple drinking wine on my father's couch like they owned him. I went to the fireplace and stared at it. This was where my uncle would have burned my future if he could. I did not let him. In the kitchen, I found one of my father's old grocery lists on the fridge. Bread, milk, coffee, oil. It broke me. Because it was proof he planned to wake up again. He did not plan to die. He did not plan to be drugged. He did not plan to be betrayed. But he planned for betrayal anyway. That evening, I sat at the dining table holding my father's mug, staring at the wall clock. Its ticking sounded like a heartbeat. Victor came by later with papers. "Sign these," he said. "Insurance updates, ownership finalization, estate closeout." I signed slowly. Each signature felt like sealing my father's memory back into place. Then Victor looked at me. "You did well," he said. I nodded. "I just wanted the truth," I replied. "I wanted him respected." Victor's expression softened. "He is respected," he said, "because you did not stay quiet." That night, I walked through the house alone, turning on lights room by room, like I was waking it up. In the kitchen, I found Dad's old coffee mug still in the cabinet. In the garage, his tools were arranged like he might return tomorrow. In the hallway, a photo of us fishing when I was 10 smiled back at me. I stared at it for a long time. I was not just fighting for property. I was fighting for a man who raised me. I went to the study and opened the safe deposit documents.
My father's handwriting, my father's plan. Truth does not die. It survives inside good sons. And now, Mark would learn something he never understood. You cannot steal a home without paying the price.
Mark tried one last move from jail. He sent me a letter. Not an apology, not remorse, a threat. Ethan, you think you won, but you do not know what you inherited. Men will come. When they do, you will beg for me. You will wish you listened. I read it twice, then burned it in the fireplace. Not out of anger, out of finality. Detective Harris told me they investigated Mark's claim about men coming. There were men, but they were not killers. They were fraud partners. They were arrested too. Mark was not warning me. He was trying to scare me into dropping charges. Too late. The criminal trial began. Mark faced fraud, coercion, theft, obstruction, and tampering. The sedative evidence made him look monstrous. The recordings made him undeniable. In court, Mark looked at me across the room like he wanted to swallow me. He whispered, "Family does not do this." I stared back, calm. "Family does not steal from a coffin," I replied. The jury listened. The judge listened. The evidence spoke louder than Mark ever could. Mark was convicted. When the sentence was read, Mark's face finally broke. Not because he was sorry, because he lost. I did not smile. I did not celebrate. I just felt my shoulders lighten. Because justice is not joy. Justice is peace. Months later, I renovated my father's house. Not into something fancy, not into something unrecognizable. I fixed the porch. I painted the walls the same color Dad liked. I repaired the fence. I planted new grass where Mark's moving truck tore the yard. Every nail I hammered felt like I was rebuilding my father's dignity. One morning, I stood in the workshop, holding Dad's old hammer. I could almost hear him behind me saying, "Measure twice, cut once." I smiled, softly. Then I walked into the living room and sat where strangers once drank wine in my father's space. That memory still hurt, but it no longer controlled me. Because I returned with police, and I returned with proof. Mark sold my dad's house behind my back. He thought grief would silence me. He thought I would accept the theft as fate. He was wrong. I protected my father after death the way he protected me in life. And if there is one thing I learned from it all, it is this. Some people smile like family, but they steal like enemies. Do not confuse blood with loyalty, because loyalty is proven, not inherited. And when someone tries to erase your father's legacy, you do not just mourn, you fight.